Yes, guys, welcome back to SFeatley F1, and we're back with another show. We're back with the Chequered flag show. So I haven't been doing these for a while, but finally got round to finally getting some of them done and catching up on some of the news. Again, we've got Mr. Peter Brook from Peter Brook F1. How you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
No worries, and my regular co-host and panelist, Brethren John's back in the building. How you doing?
Hey mate, hope you're good. Can't wait for what we have in store. Greetings, Peter.
Good to see you too.
So we'll go straight into it, and we'll start with Sergio Perez. Really, Sergio Perez obviously came out a while ago and said that if the season keeps getting extended to further than 23 races, he may consider walking away from the sport. I'm just trying to bring the article up now. There you go. Obviously he's also signed a new deal with Red Bull, by the way. Peter, what I'm also using this to just have a debate with the fact that we have a 23 race calendar at the minute, or 22. They're trying to push it to around 23 to 25 races. Sorry, my bad. You get a drink, Zoe. But yeah, they're trying to extend from around 23, 25 to 25 races they want per season. And I wanted to ask you, is that something that's too much for some of the drivers? Because last year, if you saw some of the drivers, Ricardo had to quarantine for 14 days past Christmas because of the COVID rules. And he was also saying that in Saudi Arabia, that though we've got one more race to go, he's absolutely shattered from the whole season. So yeah, what do you make of this? Do you think some drivers may consider quitting if the season keeps getting extended further and further?
Probably only the ones that are at the tail end of their careers, which Perez is, and also he's got a family and everything. I think 23 races is probably pretty much the upper limit, particularly if they're doing the races in quite a jumbled order, because it would, if they could make it more sustainable, both in an environmental perspective and just from fatigue, if they did it in a better order instead of having them jump over to Baku and then to Canada and then back to Europe again, as an example. They need to kind of keep all the Asia Pacific races together, all the European ones and all the American ones together.
Because it's not just so much about time; it's obviously logistics as well. If you're doing it within a week, you want a race at Austria to go then to France or even maybe as far as Britain, right? Because you'll be able to get there within the week. For example, my dad was an this is lorry driver, so he obviously did pallet lines, which is logistics. He even did a pallet line with Formula One Pirelli tires in the back of their truck at one point, and he would come down to Paris on a Sunday evening. I remember, right, and this is just his general job. The general trip he did. He would go down on a Sunday evening towards Paris, and then by the Monday evening, he'd be back in the UK again. Right, so, but obviously with these, there's a lot more logistics in trying to get the motorhome moved from place to place, and actually some logistics and motorhomes for the Asia races are not the actual motorhomes for the European season. They're stored in some parts of Asia, right, which then they can move around the Asian Grand Prix rather than having to ship it all the way to the Europe to then America because it would take too long. So what you said there is quite, because the traditional calendar used to be you had the first 3 or 4 races which were flyaways. Then you'd have the European bulk of the season, which apart from maybe Canada, which is one off, it used to be European gut race, European until it ended in Monza, and then you have the rest of the races flyaway. I mean, Brother John, what do you make of it? Like, do you think like 23 to 50 races is too long? And before I ask, I'll just go to MCF Adam, big up. Didn't Minicali once said that there could be a 30 races? That's not possible. That couldn't be
That's
possible for
possible.
me. You've managed to get Verstappen on your stream. Well, I don't think he looks quite like Max Verstappen, but I think did you take that as a compliment or an insult?
I mean, people have often said I look more like Vettel, to be honest, than Verstappen, but I don't know.
You can't say Verstappen yet. He hasn't. Verstappen ain't grown a beard yet, mate. Ain't old. Big up, Stephen. Hope you're well. 23 is enough. Big, yeah. John, what do you make of it? Do you think 23 is enough, or do you think there should be less races, or do you think 25 races should be considered?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm actually inclined to agree with what Peter said, but I really do think that already 23 is quite a lot, considering, where will you fit, like the dates, and also, the mere fact that, there are just too many races already, and it has actually a huge toll, on these drivers. But now, I understand what Checo said, but I really do think that, perhaps maybe it will mainly affect, people towards, the end of their career. But here's the thing, the other day we're even talking about the fact that, like the Oracle deal, whereby, is it the largest, right? Half a million, right?
£500 million,
Yeah,
that deal to Red Bull, which is
yes,
the most. It basically confirmed their budget
indeed.
cap for the next 4 years. Right, I think it was
Yeah,
a
you can
5 year
just imagine.
contract, which it
Yeah, you
was.
can,
I mean, half a billion. Yeah, £500 million is like the biggest deal by a
indeed,
sponsor in F1 history. So,
indeed, indeed,
right, no one, no,
indeed, yeah.
and like I'm sorry, I've got to stick this one in, and no wonder that like Abu Dhabi, no wonder what happened in Abu Dhabi last year.
Of course, yeah, of course, yeah. But for me, to be honest, it's just too much. But then again, it seems like, as Sir Lewis once say, that cash is king, and it seems that no matter what is put forward, or is proposed by the FIA, it's all about the show, and the drivers actually do not have much of a say. Because imagine, I'm sure maybe we're going to talk about it later on, whereby Christian was mourning, saying that
No,
like because of the budget cap, will not race, and it actually has a huge detrimental factor, towards the sponsors. That's why, there are a lot of stickers. But for myself, my personal opinion, not going too ahead of myself, they like 23 is already too much. But with what FIA has been doing, the past, should I say, the past 4 seasons,
I
trying
think
to
it's more
attract a lot
Liberty.
of
To
fans.
be fair, sorry, it's more
Yeah.
Liberty Media, I'd say, than the actual
Yes,
FIA.
indeed. Yes, indeed, very much. Yeah. Trying to recruit a lot of the young fans, and of course, I'm sure part of their objective of getting like new like, sorry, like not new sponsors, but like fans, has worked. But the issue is that 23, it's just way too much, races. But no matter if they put it to 30 or even 25, I do think that the drivers do not have much of a say. But it's 23 is already too much. I would have proposed, perhaps maybe much less races, but then like you have now to like to talk about the money that is going to be lost, but it is what it is.
I mean, money does talk in Formula One. Like, I mean, the amount of money is involved these days. Like, you've got millions of pounds, even with the budget cap, 150 mil being spent on car development and
Indeed.
the wind tunnel. There's so many parts to that 150 million pound budget cap to try and sort of curb, and they've got to be quite strict on it. And Peter, you'd obviously, I think you probably agree they have to be quite strong with the budget cap, because I know the bigger teams will want to try and push the envelope to go over that, but they don't want to. For the FIA, the only way it's going to work is if they say, no, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, last time they tried to put in a budget cap, all the teams threatened to pull out and form their own series, so they have to be a bit careful with
That
how
was
strict
2009, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think to be fair, that was a budget cap of like $50 million, which is what HRT's budget was in 2010. So you can understand why they weren't really a big fan of having that little money.
Let's just be fair. Like Hispania, HRT, that is probably the worst team I've ever seen in Formula One. Like, I'm sorry, it is. You were saying, Peter, sorry.
Yeah, and I understand needs to save money, and I guess if you want to throw it in with sustainability about not letting them get a bit ahead of themselves, it feels a little manufactured in one sense because it's hindering development and innovation a bit. But then at the same time, when you get that, you tend to get the situation we've had with Mercedes, where they're just so far ahead of everyone else because they're pumping in. Because they've been pumping in so much money during the hybrid era, they've been able to develop these really good engines and everything else. In a way that other teams just can't keep up. Yeah, in a way that other teams just can't really keep up with. But then also you get Ferrari getting their like heritage bonus or whatever it is, isn't it? Every year
heritage. They've got £50 million extra for being in the sport from day one.
Yeah.
And actually, they weren't in the first ever race.
No.
In the British Grand Prix.
Really?
It doesn't want you a little.
The first ever race, they were part of the second race, but the first race they didn't get allocation to start in the Grand Prix or take part.
Wow.
So that's why the Alfa Romeos won so easily in a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
In that Alpha, I think it was a 158, wasn't it? The 158.
The 158, yeah. The Alfetta.
The Alfetta. God, what a machine. I saw that like in 2019 going around the Silverstone circuit, because it was at the British Grand Prix before I started the race. Beautiful piece of kit.
Yeah.
Right. But it really does. And do you know what? When you see those things, it makes you really. It makes you astounded that even that, plus also that maybe the Mercedes Streamline that you saw Lewis Hamilton drive with Sterling Moss at one time. Like, it makes you hard to believe that those were the F1 cars of the 50s. Like, if you look at where the F1 cars now, you wouldn't have thought that was an F1 car. So, so much has changed. And that's all down to the investment and money that's been pumped into the sport. But before we go on about budget caps and stuff and what Christian Ron's had to say, I want to, obviously, we had the British Grand Prix, and everyone knows what happened the previous year, where you've had that first corner on turn 9 at Copse corner collision with Hamilton and Verstappen, which sent Verstappen flying into the wall. I mean, Peter, I've always argued Hamilton's case on this, saying that as he came into the corner, if you watch by frame, he was side by side with Verstappen, or at least 3/4 of the way, to the point that Verstappen could see him on the inside. So he was entitled to a car with a space, and that he kept his steering. And the reason it looked like he wasn't near him is because he had to brake because of the tight angle of the corner that he had to turn. and he kept his steering wheel the same. He never turned out. Yet Verstappen turned his car further in, expecting Hamilton to disappear. So I wanted to ask you, what did you make of that incident? Do you feel both parties were at fault, or
Well, I
Hamilton was
think
more at fault, or
I don't think anything was intentional from either. I think basically it was a racing incident,
it
but
wasn't intentional?
yeah,
No,
no, I think it was a racing incident, but Hamilton was predominantly at fault for it, basically.
that's it. You're banned. Yeah, I can see why in a sense, because you are making a maneuver down the inside at a very fast turn. But then, if you're side by side, you deserve to have a car with some space. That's part of the rules of overtaking. And I think for me, it's sort of Verstappen was going to get. It was going to happen to Verstappen at some point. Something like
Indeed.
that. Something like that was going to happen to Verstappen at some point, because he just he was always so aggressive with everyone. He was going to get some driver who was just going to be, well, I'm sorry, mate. I'm a 7-time world champion or 4-time world champion. I don't move from my spot. If I'm in the inside of you side by side, I deserve a car with space. And if you're going to come across me, then I'm going to hit you. I'm not going to be bullied off the road. So, and the celebrations afterwards, by the way, we all know Hamilton wasn't told about Verstappen being in hospital until after the Grand Prix. Like, all he was told, he got out of the car, so he obviously immediately thought he's fine. Right, so but look, anyway, that's last year. But what was more shocking, and I spent the rest of that evening clearing the messages, was the amount of racist messages on his Instagram after the Grand Prix, and even into the next Grand Prix. And that's really, for me, the worst thing about it, because people can accept it was maybe just a racing incident, or it wasn't at least intentional. But what turned out a year later, and I don't know why it's taken a year for it to come out, but Nelson Piquet decided he was going to start using his gums after that race, and came up with some racist message during the podcast after that Grand Prix. Maybe it was full of anger, because he was supporting obviously Max, because his girlfriend, because his daughter is going out with Max Verstappen at the time, right? And has been Verstappen's long-term girlfriend. But no matter what, that's disgusting from a 3-time world champion to use racing messages like that. I don't care if you come from Brazil or wherever, you don't say these sort of things. And it infuriated me for the fact that it took so long for it to come out. And apparently now, from what I'm seeing from the Daily Mail and a fair few other sources as well, is Piquet Verstappen's father? No, that Verstappen hasn't married his daughter yet. So, but he would be if he did marry his daughter. But yeah, apparently Piquet to appear in Brazilian court over racist and homophobic abuse towards Lewis Hamilton, with the 3-time world champion facing a potential £1.5 million fine. Comments made the Mercedes driver on the podcast. List something. Like, I think he should also maybe, if he said he wasn't intentionally trying that because of where he comes from or whatever, then somewhere where you don't set to educate, where you don't say these things. And plus, I'm also disgusted with Bernie, because Bernie told Hamilton to basically man up over these comments. And I'll start with you, brother John. I mean, I think obviously like I said earlier, the worst thing is it took so long to come out. So
Indeed. Yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah. To be honest, uh, if I stand corrected, like the anthem of F1, like is more like we races one, and I'm sure you know that they always are having this campaign whereby like they take the knee, so the mere
yeah,
fact, that it has taken so long is so appalling, like it's so disappointing. And it actually, like I'm actually just thinking to myself that, like what more, like what more is there, of other things that we actually do not know that has actually happened. And what is infuriating is that, like, of course, it's coming from a three-time world champion, but the mere fact that, it was good actually seeing, like, it was actually good seeing, other drivers, supporting, like a few drivers, but not all, and even some few teams, like were actually, supporting, Lewis, but it just shows that like this problem is actually not going to go away anytime soon, and it's like there's no excuse for that, or even like Red Bull not even saying anything. Is it because it's close to home? Is it because maybe it's Max's like, is it father-in-law, and also like seeing even AlphaTauri not saying anything. It's really appalling. So for me, I'm just saying, like strict measures should be taken, or even if I actually thought that perhaps he's going to be given a ban, or like to be banned from the paddock, but like enough of like words, but more like we want to see more action. That's what I think.
yeah, Peter, what do you make of it? And actually, before I say, I want to quickly relay this as well. This is um I because I got this. I watched someone I've tried to get on this channel, Wolfpack Performance. If you haven't checked his channel out, go and do so. He talks about F1 quite a lot and was very vocal about what happened to Red Bull, what happened to Lewis Hamilton with Abu Dhabi last year. But he came out with obviously what happened in Austria, with the way fans were behaving, but also came out with these statements about Red Bull, and it comes out that Red Bull parts company with F1 employee. This was at the 30th of July last year, after racist messages emerged towards Lewis Hamilton. And this was again after the British Grand Prix, where we had that incident, right? So, and obviously, I do remember Red Bull did put out a statement straight after that Grand Prix. But if we then look at this thing here as well, is another thing. Red
Indeed.
Bull uh, have here's a leaked racist map that got Red Bull executives fired from their positions, uh, which I'm sorry is just like, I mean, what is Red Bull doing? Like, and
Okay.
why isn't no action being taken? Like, if FIA want to stick to their end of racism message, surely they got to take action against Red Bull for such actions with these sort of messages and these what's going on.
I mean, well, some action is being taken because obviously these people are getting fired, which is how we know about this stuff in the first place.
Mm.
In terms of with
Good, they
Piquet,
are.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is that when this comes out, there isn't anyone that's coming out and trying to defend it, or at least anyone who matters, should we say? But regarding Piquet, I think one explanation for why it took so long to come out is the language barrier, because this happened in Brazilian media in just a podcast for a motoring magazine or something, and it's
But
the
then
kind of thing.
to be fair though, I'm sorry, I'll just say this, is if we compare it to say something like Cavani said something in his language, but was in a space of 2 or 3 weeks quickly translated on it to English, which obviously meant it was a racist term, right? Something that he clearly wasn't known about from where he came from, right? And apparently it's like the same situation here. So even so, it's been so long. It may take a few longer because of translation.
Yeah.
A whole year before it's discovered is way too long for me. I mean, I don't know what you think.
I mean, I think it was. I mean, I suppose one small question is, I think the interview happened in November or something like that. I read November or December, so for some reason it was taking ages that long after even the race had happened. But even so, I mean, I'm not a linguist, obviously, but after this did come out, there were a lot of Brazilian people giving kind of conflicting accounts about what the word actually means, and it sounds like it's one of these ones that's kind of, depending on who uses it and how they use it, it can mean anything from the N word to a kind of a name of affection or whatever. Because there was a post, I think, wasn't there, where the Piquet himself or Kelly had put up on Instagram using the same word referring to his mother, who obviously, like him, is not black. It wouldn't surprise me if it's something where by maybe 30 years ago you could get away with saying it and people wouldn't really give it much thought, or something like that. And again, he's someone who's known for having, back when he was racing, slagging off a lot of his contemporaries, which he was doing in that podcast as well, about like Keke Rosberg and stuff like that. Yeah, pretty. I mean, and yeah, they've obviously punished him by banning him from going to the races, but he barely ever goes to races these days anyway, so that probably won't affect him that much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least first of all, Red Bull have taken action against these executives and these employees for a start. But again, I think the FIA and Formula One, it's kind of like what the Premier League are doing in a sense, where
Indeed, yeah.
coming out with all these statements saying end racism, we race as one, which is not just we race as one. It's not just about racism, by the way, guys. We race as one is about sustainability, right? Equality, diversity, and also end racism as well. So talk about making sustainable fuels, for example, like because our F1 is planning in 4 years' time to go carbon neutral, to be running on was it what is it, biofuels? Sorry, to be using biofuels. That's why they introduced a new fuel called E10 in the fuel system for
That's
this
what
season.
Vettel was using when he drove the Red 5 around Silverstone. He
Yeah.
did that because he was using sustainable fuels.
It was the 14WB. Was it the
FW14B? Yeah, Red 5.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're planning. So it's good to see him actually do that, to see that it can be done. And if we are going to be able to create a biofuel that can do that, all that technology will eventually appear in the car industry. The reason the hybrid systems in modern day cars have gone up so much in development is due to is F1 turning to hybrids and its technology back in 2014. And it's what they want to do now, because obviously you've got Formula E, and they don't want to stop Formula E to put that in Formula One, then, because you need people want the sound of the engine for Formula One. So you know what I mean. They don't want to hear music whenever there's a safety car or anything like that.
No,
I want him.
Formula One has always been driving innovation. I mean, primarily in terms of road cars, mostly in terms of safety, but obviously now in terms of hybrid technologies as well. Yeah, Formula E, I can't really take it seriously, is my problem. Because the cars are so slow, they don't race on proper circuits. And despite the fact that a lot of these guys are ex F1 drivers and F1 hopefuls, the driving standards can be
Nelson
really
Piquet Jr.
appalling. I mean, yeah, he won it the first season. He was useless in Formula One. But then, I mean,
he would. And to be fair, we didn't get to see him much because he decided to help Renault cheat their way to the first ever
I mean,
night
I
race.
think hadn't they threatened him and said that he was going to lose his seat if he didn't? So, but then obviously
he said
dragged.
he would. No, the court said, and the FIA said to them, yeah, Renault probably did say that, but then the FIA did say if you gave your evidence, we would still allow you to race. But all the teams are like, no, we ain't signing this guy. We ain't signing this geezer. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think outside of that, he got a couple of lucky podium. Well, one lucky podium, but he wasn't really that good anyway.
he got that, yeah, in Germany, I believe. He got
very
place,
lucky
with
he pitted. I think before the safety car back when
just
you had
the lap before.
That's the thing, and because back then you had refueling, you could get away with missing the safety car to pit and still working out because everyone else would have to, unless it was a late safety car, everyone else would have to pit again to refuel.
No, the reason they managed to cheat their way into the Singapore Grand Prix is they pitted Alonso just before they created the safety car. But what was the most important thing, because he was so far down, he needed to do it at that lap in particular, because then he would have been optimal stop before anyone else. They did it that early, so they did it before anyone else. But it also put. Do you remember when it said that if the pit lane was closed as soon as the safety car came out, right, and then the pit lane would open after 2 or 3 laps, right? And what it did is some of the drivers had to pit, otherwise they were going to run out of fuel, which meant some of the drivers he ended up still behind, ended up with drive-through penalties, which then they took, right? So that's how that was also another key factor.
Nico Rosberger's claim that without that drive-through penalty, he could have won the race, actually. But I don't know why they closed the pit lane. I mean, maybe that's a rule from back then. I've forgotten.
Yeah, it was a rule. It was a rule.
Wasn't anything obstructing the pit lane entrance.
Yeah, because they didn't like people gaining an advantage.
Doing
a slower pits. You know, like in F1 now, if you pit when the safety car comes out, you gain literally none. You lose about 9 seconds in the pit lane.
I mean, the rule now is you can't take penalties under either a safety car or the
No. But back then, as soon as the safety car came out, the pit lane was closed.
Yeah.
And what would happen is, even if you were in the pits at the time when the safety car came out, if it was closed, you were screwed. Yeah, if you know what I mean.
So, I mean, obviously, it can be very unfair that they can.
And then it would, as soon as the cars are bunched up, then they would let them pit.
Yeah.
So that way they didn't gain an advantage in the pit lane.
Yeah.
So, but then it gave them a massive disadvantage, and in the end they scrapped the rules. At the end of it, no one liked it. No one liked it anyway, and they stopped refueling afterwards anyway. So they scrapped. In 2 years later, they're doing full fuel tanks now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So obviously, like we said, F1 is about innovation, and eventually we will be doing carbon neutral fuels. It's just a matter of time now. But I wanted to quickly mention about Hamilton and Mercedes. So Hamilton, everyone said he was like, the haters all came out and said that the first few races, he's done, he's finished, he's washed. Right? Yeah, okay. He didn't have a great start to the season. Okay. But don't ever write Lewis Hamilton off, right? After what I saw in the British Grand Prix, it was so nice to see the Mercedes finally put in a performance that could have won the Grand Prix if it weren't for Ferrari having their inter-team battle, right, which nearly cost them the race. But the fact that they could go on for so many laps on those tyres, plus also in the Austrian Grand Prix, which they say they're not really good at, they managed to do really well at that Grand Prix as well, getting another podium for Hamilton. It really does. Do you feel that Mercedes have finally got a grips on this car? Do you think it's too late for them to try and mount a comeback in a title fight and retain their constructors' crown and get Hamilton an eighth world title? And if not, do you still see Hamilton keeping the record of winning a Grand Prix in every single season that he's competed in? I'll start with John. Sorry, I'll start with John on that one.
Okay. To be fair, this is F1. Anything can happen. I'm sure you still recall like Red Bull. Is it the first three races whereby they had two DNFs, and the gap between them and Ferrari was quite big. But now, fast forward, just see how the tables were turned. To be honest, it's going to be very audacious, or should I say it's ambitious, or should I say it's kind of like wishful thinking, like to think that perhaps maybe they may throw themselves up there and
They'd have to win
win.
a lot of races, to be fair.
Yeah, to be honest, yeah.
And
But
some of
now,
them are circuits they're not good at.
indeed, but now, like with what is going to be, okay, like with what's going to happen at, is it like the French Grand Prix, like whereby FIA is going to be monitoring, the flow, because it's been rumored, I stand to be correct, it's been rumored that perhaps Ferrari and Red Bull have been, altering, the way that the flow moves, like, and Mercedes have been accusing them of cheating. And I'm sure you still recall, was it at the British Grand Prix whereby it was actually announced, and uh, they were not happy, like the team principles of
If
of
it's
Red
Canadian
Bull,
Grand Prix, it was
Oh, yeah,
Canadian
yeah, yeah.
Grand Prix
Yes,
they did
sorry.
that,
I
wasn't it?
said to be correct. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So now, if let's say if they had cheated, or should I say, if they had played their way around it, that's why maybe their car is very fast. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen, because perhaps maybe they're going to be now slow and they have
Points,
to.
all points deductions as well. They could end up giving them penalties, which
Indeed.
could end up
So
with points deductions.
indeed. So for
Or
me,
banning of. Sorry, John. Don't
indeed.
forget, McLaren were accused of cheating with the Spygate the
Oh yes.
debacle. Remember back in 2007,
Oh
and
yes.
they were banned completely from the
Indeed. Indeed.
constructors' championship. So
Indeed.
they lost the constructors' championship because no matter what they would score in the weekends
Oh
after
yes.
that,
Oh yes.
when it
Oh
was
yes.
found
Yeah.
out, they would
Oh
not
yes.
score any points. They'd
Oh
only
yes.
score points in the drivers,
Yes.
and
And
you can
Stephen,
see
let's
this
not
penalty.
forget.
But
Yes,
though,
let's not
sorry,
forget that
overall,
you.
we are talking. Sorry,
Yeah.
before you say
That's
this
okay.
is Red Bull and this is Ferrari, right? And
Yeah.
I will say, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. Ferrari are known to probably get more of the decisions than Red Bull, right?
Indeed.
Throughout
Indeed.
the years, but Red Bull are also ones that get away with certain things as well. But
Indeed. Very much.
just
Yeah.
but yeah, Peter, what do you say about this? I mean, do you feel Mercedes are finally turning a corner and they could mount a serious comeback if and maybe even get Hamilton and Russell a win or two?
I think a win is coming, either from George or from Lewis, but they're not in this title fight. even if they got to a point where they were on pace with the others, they're too far behind to really close enough to overtake them.
Well, we'll look at the standings actually. If we look at the constructors' standings, Red Bull in the lead at 359, Ferrari 303, Mercedes 237, and don't forget a 1-2 plus the fastest lap is 44 points.
Yeah.
Per weekend. So that's 80, 120, 100, so that's 44, 88, 132. So 132 would put them if
they need to get
Ferrari,
like 4 or 5 1-2s in a row with the other teams not scoring anything to overtake them. That's the fastest they could do it, and that's already almost half of the remaining races.
Yeah.
I mean, Lewis.
I think it is a little bit too late, but I do feel that Mercedes can get. I mean, if we look at the drivers, sorry, I'll look at the drivers as well. So Max Verstappen leads with 208 points. Charles Leclerc is in second with 170, so he's 38 points behind. Sergio Perez is the 150. No, hang on. 38 points is Charles Leclerc. Perez is
57 points behind.
7 points behind. Carlos Sainz is
75
points behind. George Russell is
80
points behind, and Lewis Hamilton is 99 points. 99 points behind. So 26, 52. No, yeah, 26, 52. That's win and plus fastest lap. 26, 52.
104. If he won, so if Hamilton won the next 4 races and got fastest lap, and none of the other 5 drivers finished on the podium, which I find very hard to believe, then he would take the lead in the championship.
Well, if Max didn't score any, and Charles Leclerc got only like 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, so that's the thing. You'd have to have all the others basically off the. Other than George, you'd have to have all the others off the podium for him to then take the lead. Which I don't think is obviously the one saving grace that Mercedes have had so far is reliability compared to Red Bull and Ferrari.
Ferrari, I do feel they could jump. Is a team they could jump. If we go back to constructors standing, they are what they are 70, 99, 96 points behind. So 44, 88. So they're less than 3 wins away, right? I do feel they can catch Ferrari because of their reliability. Even in the Austrian Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz, his car burnt to a crisp, and Charles Leclerc having those problems right at the end of the Grand Prix. And I will just mention this before I go on to Horner and his budget caps. I will just mention this again. What about it's still a bit weird that he can say how big I know, mate, don't worry. Hey Steven, I think it's too late for Mercedes, although they could get close to second probably. Yeah, I feel that with Mercedes, that they could catch because of Ferrari's unreliability. And the Austrian Grand Prix, what really alarmed me about Carlos Sainz's fire, right, was obviously he had to keep his foot on the brake to get out the car because it was rolling down the hill, right? Then you saw one marshal with a fire extinguisher and some sort of plank to try and feed it under the car, I believe, to stop it from rolling. But there was only one marshal. You needed 2 or 3 marshals to do it. There should be at least 2 or 3 marshals at every post, right? For me, why was no one apart from that one marshal helping Carlos Sainz get out the car with a car that was nearly about to catch him on fire as well? Because his literally was about that far away from the flames because he had to stay in the car to keep the car from sliding down the hill. Why wasn't no one acting? I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, Peter, what do you make of that? Because that is, for me, quite disturbing.
I mean, it wasn't more or less. It wasn't. It didn't. The car didn't really start going up in flames until more or less he tried to come to a halt going up the hill. I mean, marshals volunteer. They're not employed by the circus or anything, so they don't necessarily have a sort of centralized.
And they do. By the way, they do a fantastic job. But
they don't. All of them do. They don't have a sort of centralized training regime or anything like that.
But usually they are marshals that usually do it every single year. They usually come back and help out every year. If you know what I mean.
Sometimes it could be. It depends on your training and thinking on your feet. I mean, I used to marshal at a go-kart circuit, and we ended up every week there was something happening which I didn't expect because it wasn't something that was covered in my training. And we didn't have carts bursting into flames, but we had things like wheels coming off and carts flipping over and stuff like that, where they didn't really say, "Oh, in the event of this, you're supposed to do this," and that sort of thing.
How did you manage to do marshalling for a karting?
I was this was more than 10 years ago. I was a teenager at the time. It was my local kart circuit.
I thought it'd be something I'd love to do. If I could,
it is really? For me. I broadly, it was quite fun. You know, it's quite a cool job to have as a teenager.
I think if it was an F1 circuit, I wouldn't be much help because trying to push cars away and that I couldn't do that.
You definitely need more specialist training for proper cars.
Yeah,
like that.
But karting, I definitely would like to help out with that. Trust me.
I mean, it's broadly speaking, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the thing is, because I was already watching F1, so I knew the rules about flags and stuff like that already. It's just more that we
kept do the flags in F1.
Yeah,
but
the problem I had is that we kept having it was an outdoor circuit, and we kept having things happen that weren't covered in my training, such as carts flipping over, wheels coming off, people that would get angry and just get out of the car and their cars and just walk off and just leave it in the middle of the circuit. That happened a few times, and just a few things where I couldn't really I wasn't able to. I was left on my own on a marshal's post and just wondering, should I be calling a red flag? What should I be doing in this situation?
Like, the thing, I'll tell you a story about the race control and the marshalling. In 2003, with the when they used to do testing during the season, they used to do testing sessions before they clamped down on the expenditure of these sessions, and only did it with official tests before the season or during the season that are officially set up by the FIA. Before that, they used to test as much as they like. This is why when Mercedes would have a problem, they'd have to take so long and so far into the season to finally start finding the solutions. Whereas back in the day, in Schumacher's day, the reason people say Schumacher was so much better at finding the problems and solving them as Hamilton is because he could spend tons of time at Maranello, right, and also at other circuits, test at Mugello and something like that in Italy, testing that Ferrari, right, nearly nearly between every race to try and get the best out of it with any upgrades they've got coming on. Whereas Mercedes today, they can only do it within strict tests that F1 set up, which are not many tests at all. It's about 1 or 2. Or during the practice sessions, and the wind tunnel in a wind tunnel that's restricted now to so many hours because they're constructors champions, and also the amount of time they get on the track in practice sessions, because it's the only other time they get to test them. So that's why it takes longer for them to find the problems. So, but anyway, the story I was going on about is in 2003, during this test, we got special access to like the special area with Williams. So we got to spend time where there was Williams was in the garage and that. Then we managed to get on the old start finish straight podium by jumping over the gate. So don't tell anyone. And then we once we got out of there, we went to race control. Right, and the guy had been doing it for years at race control, and he was astonished because I was like a kid that knew so much about Formula One, and I was just rambling on about flags and everything like that. And he's like, "Did you want to do my job?" I said, "Yeah, I did it." So he said, "All right then." And at that point, I don't know whether BMW Williams did it intentionally, but Ralph Schumacher went off and hit the barriers at Brooklands, I believe it was, not before Prix, with the old with where it used to go left, right at Abbey, then down under the bridge.
Priory, Chapel and Priory.
Chapel and Priory, yeah. So because Priory is just before Luffield.
Yeah, Chapel's the fast one. Brooklands is a really slow corner.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. So it's Chapel. They went down
under the bridge.
Yeah, under the bridge and then into Chapel and Priory. So he went off there, and obviously they had the red flag. So the red flag had come out. All the cars were in the pits. Once they cleared the wreckage and got it all sorted, he told me, he said, "Now push that button there, and you'll put up the green flag, and you'll instruct everyone to put out the green flag." So I pushed that button, and I told everyone that, but I basically initiated the session to be resumed. Right?
Wow.
Right. Plus, he said, once you've done that, right, press the radio button, which which is the announcer throughout the pits. So race control announced that the session's open or closed, or pit lanes open or closed during the session, right? So he said if you put that, you can communicate to every single team in the pits that the session has been resumed and the pit lane's open. So he got me to push this button, and I told the teams that that the pit lane was open, you can start the session again. And I was like, sick. It was so cool. Like, and I bet most of them were like, is that an 8-year-old kid? What the fuck? What the fuck's going on today? But yeah, and then we went into where I think it was the commentators area. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, marshals do a fantastic job, as we will say. It's just with that incident, it really did annoy me that it was taking so long for multiple marshals to come and help Sainz stop the car and get out. All because the flames weren't at the front of the car. All he needed someone was to bend down and just hold it by its front wing. Get a couple of people to hold it by its front wing while he got out of the car.
I don't think you need a lot more than a couple of people to hold a car.
3 or 4 people. Let's put 3 or 4 people, shall we say?
Even though I think more than that, if the cars weigh 700
kilograms.
You're
not helping my cause here, mate. Yeah, you're not helping my cause here.
He tried to. One of the marshals tried to put a wooden chock under the front wheel. Just rolled over it because by that the thing is the car was already rolling backwards, but also it's on quite a steep incline, so I don't think that would have stopped it anyway. I mean, Carlos, I think he did. He basically turned it so that it reversed into the tire barriers. Was the only way he really got out.
Well, he turned it and then he just ended up jumping out. So he realised that the flame, he couldn't stay in there any longer.
He obviously had turned it enough because otherwise it would have just rolled straight back onto the circuit, and then they probably would have had to red flag the race.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He probably turned it as hard as he could, put it on full lock, and then just jumped out the car because he knew the flames. The flames were getting to the cockpit at the time.
We had this Nürburgring 2013 when Jules Bianchi retired, going up the hill, and
Yeah.
the car rolled backwards
Or
across
fire.
the track, halfway down across the
Oh my god, that was
green and
so
everything.
scary.
They didn't red flag. I think they just put a safety car out for that.
But back in them days, they. Oh. Yeah, anyway, yeah, back in them days, back in them days, they didn't have the VSC, right?
No.
So they didn't have the VSC, and they were more. You see more now with every race incident. If it's a heavy impact, there's usually a red flag, right? Because obviously they want to stop the race to retire tyre barriers. These days, like back in them days, you'd see someone hit the barriers, but they'd only bring out the safety car, like at most. And if something like that happens, well, they might bring out just the double wave yellows, right, when there's marshals on track. But
I think
because of what happened to Bianchi, it's lining off at
I think it's partly vigilance. I mean, obviously, ever since his fatal accident, they've been a lot more cautious with
VSCs now for when any
wet weather. I think it's also because now tech pro barriers are ubiquitous, and they have to red flag races if the barriers get deformed, which happens very easily because they're designed to do that. Whereas before, if you were just hitting Armco or a tyre barrier that bounces back again, there's no need to red flag it.
Well, we saw Armco be repaired back in the 2014 British Grand Prix at the first lap with Raikkonen, but also I think as well, it's the VSC we have these days is for anyone that comes on circuit, like a marshal or anything, right?
Yeah.
Because of what happened to Bianchi easily sliding off the road, they realised that if he could just fall off the road like that, he could easily collect, because he hit the back of a pickup truck, right? Collecting Mitsubi's car, he could quite easily hit a truck or a marshal, right? Plus also what happened in 1994, Martin Brundle made it clear to them, I think, made it clear to the media and to probably the FIA itself, that what happened in 1994, where he aquaplaned off the road at the same corner and hit a marshal, right? With only double wave yellows, right? It meant that they couldn't just. These days, that's why now, for anyone that's on circuit, we have an immediate virtual safety car to stop anyone. I think you can get away with it if it's very far off the circuit with only double wave yellows.
Or if it's very early in the race, so you've got a whole minute before the rest of the field comes around.
If it's very early in the race or it's very, very far off the circuit, in dry conditions, it's fine. But in wet conditions, VSC every time someone comes on.
It's more that it annoys me how long it takes them to call some of this stuff, because I mean, red flags, they tend to call those as fast as they can.
Yeah.
But there are so many VFCs and safety cars, and you're looking at a crash and you're like, okay, that's a safety car, and you're waiting for about 30 seconds, and eventually they
saw that with the British Grand Prix. You saw Zhou's accident. I saw someone, as soon as I saw someone fly across the screen at the back in the background, I was like, whoa, red flag. Now, I knew already that was a serious accident.
I think actually they called the red flag because of the activists, because I think who'd gone out to protest
I don't think so, because I think it was they red flagged. I think they red flagged the race soon as after they came out of the loop.
They were going down the Wellington Straight, I think, because there were protesters on the Hangar Straight, and I think there might have been ones on the Wellington Straight as well, because I'm sure that Sainz said he thought that was why it was red for them on the circuit as he was coming out of arena.
Whoa, John, you're having problems with your mic, mate.
Oh, sorry.
British GP.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that's why, is that the drivers at the front thought it was because of the protesters, because obviously they couldn't see what was happening behind them.
But even then, it should have been a straight red flag put the protesters. Right.
Well, it pretty much was, and obviously they came out. The thing is, they came out at the same time as the crash happened, so they.
I'm sorry, but see these idiots. I'm sorry if you think I'm going to be harsh here, but I don't care. I'm getting to a point I don't give a fuck about them anymore, because they stop in the middle of motorways, which could stop innocent people that need an ambulance. It could stop them getting an ambulance they need to save their life and getting them to the hospital to save their life, right? As well as many other things that is needed across this country, just because they want us to just stop using oil, right, and use carbon neutral fuels. You're doing that at a British Grand Prix for Formula One, where in 4 years' time, if you're an actual F1 supporter, you know that carbon is about to go into running biofuels and self-sustainable for some from in the next 4 years, right? And then as soon as that's been able to achieved, they will then that technology will then filter down into the car industry like it did for the hybrids. If you're an F1 fan, right, that's at that and you're a protester, you would know that, right? And I don't mind them protesting to stop us using oil, because we need to stop using oil. We need to be green and looking after the planet. I get that. But doing this at a British Grand Prix, right, with 125,000 people watching, millions of people watching on telly, right, and you're doing this in the middle of a Grand Prix, right? I'm sorry, if these individuals were on the Wellington Straight as they came down the first lap and one of the drivers didn't slow down in time and hit them, I'm sorry, like, part of me is like, well, I'm sorry, if you do something like that, you deserve what you get. Because that's just wrong. It's wrong. Right? It's just wrong on all levels. That is not how you protest. Right? Do a petition. Protest outside Parliament. It's where it's safe. Do not do it on a live Formula One circuit. Right? With cars that do over 200 miles an hour. Like, part of me thinks, like, are they really actually wanting to die just because they want to have their voice heard? Like, over something that we're trying to fix, but we haven't got the technology yet. Seriously. I mean, Peter, what do you make of it?
I mean, I don't know if it was intentional on their part to actually not be sat on the racing line on the Hangar Straight. Maybe if they knew that that was going to be the case. I mean, it surprised me
Well, they
how
did.
easy.
They made it very well. From what I heard, they've made it very clear that that's what they were planning to do. That's why the police were trying to warn them. If the police were trying to warn them off, where were they then? You saw the
This
image
is, this
here.
is the
Look,
thing that surprised me.
where's
There were warnings on like the
there were
Thursday,
warnings. So
on
why
Thursday,
no
Friday
one?
that they were
Where's
planning
the
to
cops?
protest. And
Where's the cops?
I mean, what surprised me, obviously, well, the thing is, okay, you don't know who these people are until they break out onto the circuit, so they could be at any part of the circuit. What surprised me is how easily they got past the marshals, because there's obviously
Yeah.
the fence. There's the fence with the marshals post, but then there's another fence behind that separates
Yeah,
the
the gap, any
spectators.
gap of the barriers and the fence will have a marshal
So they
next
have
to
to
it.
break. They have to break through two. I mean, in one of the videos that someone filmed on their camera, you can see a marshal trying to grab somebody before they run out onto the circuit. But yeah, it just surprised me how easily they got through.
Where did you find a video of it?
I can't. There are loads of videos on YouTube, just amateur ones, people on their phones, and you can see them. There's a couple where they're coming out, like pretty much where these people are is where the protesters are entering the circuit from, and they're coming. One of them, they're kind of walking on the side of the hill by the bridge that goes over the Hangar Straight or the embankment, and one of the marshals is trying to grab them and stop them, and that.
Just gonna try and see if I can find anything. Bear with me. I'll see if I can find anything on Twitter.
I mean, it's come up. The thing is, people obviously there was an obvious effort during the race and afterwards to give these people as little attention as possible because they weren't.
Yeah,
They
don't
weren't.
deserve the attention.
This is the thing. When the race was going on and when the red flag was on, anyone who was on Twitter knew that they were on the track, but they didn't mention it in the broadcast until right at the very end when they started the race again. That there had also been people on the circuit, but obviously they didn't give them any screen time and that. But
sorry about that. That's burning down, obviously. See if there's anything on.
It's one thing there hasn't really been much discussion about because you think it would be kind of prudent is improving security at circuits if they think this is likely. I mean, it probably isn't going to happen in any of the other countries because this seems to be very unique to Britain. This kind of eco nut jobs and doing these kind of things. But yeah,
you don't seem to see it in Europe.
It's but like obviously at the end of races you have the track invasion and that's fine because there's obviously the race has ended. But otherwise it's like it obviously is a bit too easy to get out on the circuit. Because again, this happened in 2003 with that Irish priest who ran at the cars again on the Hangar Straight.
Oh, back in 2003, innit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was only one guy, and he was kind of hard to miss because he wasn't just sat down on the circuit, but he was running at them carrying signs and stuff like that.
But to be fair, like in back in look, when you have pre-warnings, you should be stopping it. When there should be marshals. Then there should be extra marshals at every single gap, or marshals with police at every single gap where you could possibly get on the circuit. There should be police saying, like, standing there ready for anyone that's going to come on the circuit during the Grand Prix.
I mean, what it needs, I'm trying to remember because it's been 10 years since I went to Silverstone. But
because, for example, all the fans were streaming onto the circuit after the 2019 British Grand Prix, and because I was so tired on my legs, I couldn't walk anymore. I needed to use a scooter to get around the circuit, an electric scooter, me and my mum, right? But they wouldn't let the electric scooter on the circuit. But then again, you're quite happy, easy to stop me getting on a Grand Prix circuit, right? When the barriers are massive and so many fans are crowding me, right, with a lowly scooter, right, that I can easily get through the massive crowd without you noticing, right? But you can't stop activists in a small little gap trying to get on the circuit, right?
It just needs a fence, gates in the outer fence, which I'm guessing they have already, because the inner one obviously has the posts which are open because the marshals need them, but the outer fence is to keep the spectators away. So that doesn't need people coming and going from it during a race. You just need a gate that can be locked. And then the only other way they're getting on is to climb over the fence. Because even the elevated grandstands have another fence, and even if they don't, you'd have to jump several feet to get down to the marshal's level, as you see with the footage of Zhou's crash.
Oh my life! Look! I just showed us. No, that's wrong one. That. So I'll show you another picture. I just see this. Look, that must have been.
This is after the red flag. So yeah, obviously all the drivers saw them.
That must be. It looks like Esteban Ocon.
Yeah, so no, the race had already been red flagged and they drove past them.
Did Esteban Ocon already have an accident by then?
No, that's Alonso. No. Actually, no, that is Ocon. Yeah, because he crawled. I think he you can see the front left looks a bit funny. Yeah, he was behind. Him and Tsunoda took much longer to get. To get back to the pits.
Look how close they are to an F1 car, and that's an F1 car with a punctured tire. with a dysfunctional rear car that can't steer very well, so it couldn't be able to steer out the way if they got in the way.
Yeah.
Fucking stupid.
I mean, I think because if they were obviously on the hangar straight, is that if without Zhou's crash, the race would have been red flags before they got to them anyway, because they would have the marshals would have race control would have seen that before they.
There's the Haas. And they, oh my god! Look, watch. Seriously,
That's so messed up.
are you serious? Are you serious? And people telling me that they have a point. I'm sorry, you lose your argument when you do shit like this. When you do shit like this, you lose your argument. Like,
This was an example. Like this was an example of anything that
this
could
is
have
even better.
possibly
Look,
had gone wrong.
this is even better angle. Watch. And he's trying to get back in front of the car. No, that is Ocon. You can see the damage to the car. Look.
Yeah.
You can see he was trying to get back in front of it. Look. The guy on the right is trying to be dragged off, and he's fighting him to try and get back in front of that car. I'm sorry, that's sick. I'm sorry. If
Oh, he's disappeared.
He's disappeared indeed.
My bad. Sorry. If an F1 fan is prepared to do that, then I'm sorry. Well, if the protesters are trying to stop that, I'm sorry, you lose your argument. You lose your effing argument. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear about what they want to say anymore. I don't want to hear them. We're trying to solve the technology. F1's trying to solve it. If you want to protest, go protest at Motor Rally or MotoGP, because they ain't doing anything to solve it. Right? They ain't trying to create a biofuel. F1 is. Right? Do it somewhere else. Or actually, do it where it's supposed to be done, outside Parliament. Right? But hang on, you won't do that, because these companies, it's what's funny, when they do a protest, the last time they protest outside the Houses of Parliament, do you know what was running their protest area with the tents they were tenting out on? Right, do you know what was powering them? A diesel generator. A diesel fuel generator covered over with cardboard to disguise it. Hypocrites. But look, anyway, we could go on ever without them, but hopefully there's not going to be any more of them in the future, because the last thing we need to see is something like that happening to any fan of anything. And actually, I want to make sure another accident, because Zhou's accident, before we wrap up, what did you make of that, Peter and Brethren?
Well, I mean, obviously the wheels locked. I mean, that's the next safety thing. Is apparently the roll hoops aren't strong enough.
The roll hoop should be strong enough, though. The top of the car shouldn't cave in on itself. It usually stays.
I mean, he did. This is the thing, because he didn't I don't know I don't know what kind of tests they do, but obviously it hit the track pretty hard.
Yeah, because for me, when it flipped over, but it didn't flip over like I've seen F1 cars like. Do you remember the Prost that went up at Michael Schumacher in 2001 in Germany, and it landed upside down? I've seen that, but the roll hoop stayed perfectly intact, and it didn't jump that high. So for it to cave in like that is quite serious for me, because it shouldn't cave in like that. That's why I said it shouldn't have needed the halo to protect him, because the roll hoop should never have caved in. ever.
Mm.
It shouldn't. So it's a design fault in the roll hoop rather like for me. Plus, so luckily they did have the halo, because if they didn't and they caved in, you would have had his head scratching along the floor. So, but yeah, sorry, Peter, you were saying.
I mean, yeah, it's the thing. Obviously, it hit the ground quite hard. I mean, you can see. I think it's the speed mostly, because there was a big chunk of the tarmac missing on the circuit afterwards, and so it looks like it probably just dug itself in and then got caught and rips off because of that, rather than just a straight vertical. Because often, a lot of the times when the cars roll, they're going at a much slower speed, or they roll several times, and that kind of
Dissipates the speed.
it dissipates the energy. And it just got flipped over at a very, very high speed, and landed on tarmac instead of on the grass or in the gravel or something like that.
Mm.
Um,
John, what did you make of it? Quickly.
Okay, I'll just have to say that, it's something that you do not want to ever see, or even to ever witness at all, because, that was a very horrible crash. But, very often we tend to, blame or criticize the FIA, but the mere fact that, like the halo saved, like his life, like you saw how he hit the ground, like how the halo hit, like the ground was very astonishing. And to think that, like he came out with,
What was,
no.
I think, the most important thing as well is that the car hit the fence
Indeed,
right on the
indeed.
side. And to be fair, I've seen
Yeah,
that circuit. If that circuit was 10 years ago or 10 years before that, that fence would have been there,
yeah,
and you would have
indeed.
been facing the car, ended up going into the stands or
Yeah,
parts of
indeed.
it, which
Indeed.
would have been even worse. It would have been a repeat of Le Mans in 1955, where a piece of the car torpedoed into the freaking grandstand, killing nearly 100 people. Literally,
Indeed.
just heads just came off as the piece flew through, and that's the last thing we wanted to see.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So to be honest, kudos to FIA, because I'm sure when the hello was first introduced, a lot of people criticized it, but um, I know that that same day also in F2 it saved. I'm not forgetting the name of the other driver,
Oh
in
yeah,
F2.
Dennis
What's his name?
Hauger.
Oh
Dennis
yes,
Hauger.
yes, like whereby he caused, like that
Who was
incident whereby
It was
who
Roy
was the other
Nissany.
driver?
sausage came.
Roy
Yeah,
Nissany.
sorry.
Roy
Yes,
Nissany and Hauger. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. I can't
yes,
remember the
indeed,
name.
indeed, yeah. So whereby, like his car, his car went over the sausage curve, and it could have actually, like killed that person. But to be honest, kudos to like the person who actually designed or even
It was
thought of the
Mercedes that
halo.
designed it, apparently.
Yeah, oh wow, yeah, indeed, yeah. So I'm sure maybe, to be honest, I was so happy to see
No
him,
one, no wonder Max
come out.
Verstappen didn't like it when he first came out.
Yeah,
But look, yeah, that accident, it tells me again, and I'll quickly say this before we wrap up, because I know we've been talking about this for a while now. It it magnifies again why sausage curbs are not necessary. You saw the sausage curbs in Canada, right?
indeed.
It's not necessary because it's like a ramp. If someone goes off like that into a turn, right, it serves as a ramp where it could be lifted into someone else's path, which could quite easily take someone out, right? And thank God that crash, what happened on a sausage curb in this age of Formula One or F2, not before 2018. So, yeah, because otherwise that guy would have been dead as a door now, straight away, because like of a sausage curb that acted as a ramp. them things are like car park speed bumps. They belong in a car park to keep cars slow, right? They're not to be used as a deterrent to try and cut the corner, especially when you've got technology that can accurately tell that, especially when they're using technology such as in Austria, that immediately tells them if they've exceeded track limits, which gives them a warning. Right? You could do that on the end of turn 10 in Austria, which gave them about 42 penalties, warnings throughout the Grand Prix, but you can't do that for as an alternative to having sausage curbs to stop them corner cutting. Right? I'm sorry. For me, sausage curbs are not needs. They need to be dropped. If they're going to learn anything from that accident, is that sausage curbs need to be dropped straight away. Would you agree with that, Peter?
Yeah, I mean they're only really suitable on the very slowest of corners, but there are places like, I mean, we saw this there was a sports car race in Monza on the weekend where another car got flipped over by a sausage curb at Variante della Loggia.
Remember Verstappen last year and
Yes.
Yeah, it's the thing with slow because obviously with very slow corners like that, it's designed to try and stop you cutting the corner. It's like, well, here's a thought: maybe just put gravel, and then they won't cut the corner, but then they also won't fly in the air because again, that's a
yeah. Sorry.
I mean, the chicane is slow, but you can approach it at high speed, which obviously you do at Monza. In 2011, obviously, Liuzzi went off and went across the grass and slammed into a couple of cars. So if you have sausage curb, if you went straight across, you could hit the sausage curbs and flip. So it's not, they're just needless, really, as a deterrent, because it's this obsession. Again, we had this in Austria with endless track limits. It's like there wouldn't be these track limits violations if you didn't make it so easy to go off track. If they had gravel and grass on the side rather than just
That's
more
the thing.
tarmac.
Back in the days, it's because they wanted to stop drivers being eliminated from the race for a very slight mistake. But that's F1.
Yeah, that's the thing. These are the best. These are the best drivers in the world.
These are the best drivers in the world. They shouldn't be making mistakes
do this.
in the gravel.
They do this at every race. They drive 50, 60 laps and they don't make an error
But
ever. But that's not much of a challenge for them.
Yeah, but sometimes you do get the times where if they're sliding off, the gravel can then also end up making them flip over as well, because it might dig itself in. But apart from that, Unity seems to stop when it hits its final roll, or when the actual energy stops. When the actual energy stops, when it hits the floor of the gravel, it then flips and then stops, which is probably a better thing, especially with the halo and everything, right? Than having it roll on the surface road area. But it's like you said, right? You used to have a gravel trap around Parabolica, and I remember when they pushed back the gravel trap 200 yards, and I'm like, well, you've just ruined that corner. The whole part of it was because it had a gravel trap. So if you made a mistake and you used too much of it, you span yourself into the wall.
And now drivers are always getting track limits violations at Parabolica on the exit because
they
made it so easy.
Yeah, and don't forget F3. If you remember in F3 a few years ago, there was an accident where I think it was the 2019 one.
Yeah, Alex Peroni.
Peroni hit the sausage curb and took off in the middle of the air, hitting the fence, which just above the marshals, right, where any sort of debris could have come off the car and smashed on their head, caving their head in. Right? If there was a grandstand there, it would have gone into the grandstand. Parts would have been going into the grandstand easily. Right? They're not necessary. Right? You've got a system that automatically tells people that they automatically have used too much curb on the exit. Right? So why can't you use it for that, and also to measure if they've if they've used too much of the inside of the corner? It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Right? Simple rule. If they use all four wheels off the behind the white line, which is what the rules say, right, then it's then it's corner cutting. If they've done it with 2 wheels or not the whole of the fourth wheel over, right, then it's not. Simple as that. You can do it for the if you can do it for the outside of a corner, you could do it for the inside. Simple as that. And on that bombshell, as they say in Top Gear, we're coming to an end. I know it's been very long, guys, so I really do appreciate you taking all your time out to come on this evening. Yeah, Peter, I'll start with you, mate. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for, by the way, thanks to everyone in the chat, but thanks, Peter, for coming on for such a long time, and it's nearly an hour and a half into it, so I really do appreciate it. Where can we find you, mate?
So my channel on YouTube is Peterbrook F1, and then I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, Brook_F1.
Wicked. Make sure you go and subscribe to his channel right now. Right. I watched the video of with the halo of Sadie's accident. Quite an interesting thing. Quite an interesting one to watch that video. To be honest, very interesting. But yeah. So if anyone does know, to go and watch it. Go and subscribe and make sure you follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. John, thanks for coming on again. Where can they find you, mate?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Peter for giving us your time from your busy schedule. Thank you so much, and for giving us your time. For me, they can always find me here on the YouTube channel SFeatleyTV F1, right? And also on
SFeatleyTV F1.
Yes, F1. Oh my!
We've changed the TV.
Oh yeah, indeed. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and also on Twitter, it's at Brethren_John.
Yeah, bear with him. He's just trying to get used to the fact he's not a Red Bull supporter anymore.
Come on, you just had to, right?
Yes, I had. After the amount of bantering we were giving each other last year, trust me. Like after the Hungarian Grand Prix, and he said after the way they acted, he said he was going to be a Haas driver during qualifying. And obviously they finished at the back of the grid. He said, "Mate, I'm going back to Red Bull. I can't put up with that for the rest of the season."
Come on.
He said, "You never know. You might be half good next year." They said, "Yeah, but I can't wait that long."
Well,
Not after that
right
one
now I'm
session.
creating.
Yeah, thanks to everyone that's tuned in. Really do appreciate it. And we're back tomorrow, I believe, at 3 p.m. For 3 p.m. I believe, or 8:30 p.m. depending on what time I feel we need to do it on. So it'll be 7 p.m. No, 9 p.m. I think it will be. I'll work what time it is, and you'll find out on the community tab. But on SFeatleyTV's community tab, where you'll find out where we're going next live on this channel. And it will be tomorrow at some point. But please do go and subscribe to Peterbrook F1. Go follow Brother John. Plus follow us on SFeatley F1. Or you can follow my other channel and subscribe to that, which is SFeatleyTV, which all raises money and awareness for Children's Liver Disease Foundation, which of course is like one of the greatest causes you can give on YouTube. But until then, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.